For our presentation, we're going to be comparing the CSR programs of Nike and Adidas, and we are Group 3. I'm Gianna, and I'm going to be discussing Adidas's CSR. Adidas mainly focuses on human rights and sustainability. For human rights, they have a due diligence process, which means that they focus on high-risk locations where they manufacture and really focus on those locations to try to remediate and mitigate any of those issues. And they also have a third-party complaint system that allows them to track how many complaints they get regarding labor human rights violations. They have their Modern Slavery Outreach Program, which launched in 2016, and that addresses issues of forced labor, child labor, and migrant labor. Under this program, their goal is to pay fair living wages to their employees, as well as seek out business partners who aim to do the same. Adidas also makes sure that any businesses they partner with are not violating any of their labor practices, and if they do violate them, they usually terminate those business relationships. For sustainability, I'm going to talk about it in the next slide, so I'm just going to give a brief rundown. So their main focuses for sustainability are addressing environmental issues, overseeing and managing their supply chain, engaging with their stakeholders, and having a sustainability team. Now on to a more in-depth analysis of sustainability. For the environmental approach, they want to improve water efficiency and quality by reducing water consumption by 35% per employee. They overall just want to reduce the water consumption in their supply chains and improve the quality of their wastewater. And even just using more sustainable materials can have a positive impact on water, and so they're increasing the use of recycled polyester and partly ocean plastic, and also expanding the use of waterless dyeing. For water risk, Adidas realizes their factories contribute to water risk at a local level, whether it be depletion or pollution. So in 2017-2018, they did risk assessments of water sources near their factories, collected and analyzed water samples from the basins, and put programs in at high-risk locations. For mitigating climate change, they created the environmental management system that oversees 18 of their sites to take multiple measures to combat climate change. Adidas's Green Company aims to improve environmental performance at all of their levels, whether it be offices, manufacturing sites, retail locations, and even distribution centers. They also have a budget, the Green Energy Fund, which is specifically allocated for carbon reduction projects. For the supply chain, they focus on how they source their relationships, and so they believe that their environmental compliance is based on the strength of their partnerships, and this really lays the foundation within their supply chain. So for risk mapping, they map their supply chains to easier monitor their suppliers and how they produce in environmentally and socially responsible ways. Countries are mapped as at risk based on the due diligence process that I discussed before. So if they are labeled as high risk, those countries are going to be audited every 1 to 2 years. And Adidas also does risk assessments for businesses, and that will determine if Adidas will continue to work with that company. Also within the supply chain, they think it's really important to train and empower their suppliers, and they do this to achieve more effective and sustainable practices within the supply chain by implementing training sessions. So they do fundamental training, which is training on workplace standards, factory approval processes, and the sustainability team's operating guidelines. They do performance training, which is detailed training on labor issues and health and safety and environmental practices. And then, of course, sustainability training, which trains on their rating tools, sustainable compliance planning, and supplier self-assessment methods. For their partnership approach, they really focus on collaborating with other organizations to promote sustainability. And just to name a few organizations they've partnered with the Better Cotton Initiative, which promotes improvements in key environmental and social impacts of the cotton cultivation worldwide. Parley for the Oceans aims to create awareness and forging collaborations to end the destruction of the oceans. They also partnered with the Zero Discharge of Hazardous Chemicals, which is a group that strives to reduce the impact of harmful substances. Based on concerns of human rights violations and negative environmental impact, Adidas feels it is their duty to closely engage with governments in many countries regarding these issues. So just to name some examples, when Adidas partnered with the International Labor Organization, they reached out and spoke with the Cambodian government about prison labor issues. Another similar occurrence would be when Adidas engaged with the Uzbekistan government on the issue of forced child labor in the cotton industry. So essentially, Adidas feels like it's their civic duty to engage with countries who are not promoting best practices, whether it be environmental related or labor related. Now, the sustainability team is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. The social and environmental affairs team is made up of people with a variety of occupations. It could be engineers, HR managers, lawyers, former members of NGOs, and they all sit on this team to ensure compliance in the supply chain. They manage community engagement, promote and develop environmental initiatives, and collaborate with other organizations to enact change within the industry. And of course, the Human Resources Department does a similar job, but the department makes sure Adidas's brand and channels are being representative of its core values regarding sustainability. And they also make sure that whoever is employed holds and executes those same values.
Our group D, the biggest sports company are Nike and Adidas. And for the Nike brief overview of CSR areas, Nike have several purposes to maintain this company. The first is the important part is create sustainable products and future like for people and sportsmen. It means they promise to using any very renewable energy to generate products for the Nike brand, and moving the world forward through sports and driving equality among sportsmen in the world, like in races or any competitions in the world, like which Nike are sponsored. So the most important part we did is the sustainability. It means like Nike using closely 100% of the renewable energy to generate any Nike products, and have no compromises for sustainable innovation to generate any new products. So for the in-depth overview of Nike, of the part of sustainability, Nike products are made by trusting supplying companies, which means like Nike have consolidated supplying companies like which cooperated for more than 15 years, and it can make sure the Nike's branding and quality of products. And Nike's manufacturing sources are all based on environmental producting and renewable energy, such as like lower carbon materials. Like for the most important point for Nike to generate products, environmental protecting is the most important part for them to for the manufacturing any Nike shoes or Nike clothes. Keeping responsibility is one of the points to solve the products problems, to generate any new products for the sportsmen to train and live in the normal lives. Even though Nike has a very consolidated relationship with the supplying companies, they also have the high standards for these companies, for these supplying companies to manufacturing and keep sustainability for producing products.
So moving into reasoning in communication channels and modes, when you look at Nike and Adidas, they both have similar, a trend that we're seeing amongst corporations and bigger companies is this idea of 2020 targets. So here you'll find that their priority issues for 2018 were transforming manufacturing as well as unleashing human potential and minimizing environmental footprint, which included carbon, water, chemistry, and waste reduction. And this is going along with our sustainability trend and what we've been talking about previously in our presentation. Continuing on with the conversation, Nike presents its progress towards its 2020 targets as of 2018 in a very simplistic, very visual, but also something that is very easy on the eyes. You'll see that they use neon colors, which oftentimes doesn't actually work with a lot of things, but they make it work here. And one of the main goals was to attract and develop an increasingly diverse, engaged, and healthy workforce, which we found interesting that this was something that they highlighted because they chose the right things to highlight, things that people care about, things that their consumers are going to look for. So this makes Nike responsible and held accountable for talking about the issues that people care about. Now, when we look at Adidas, they also have a similar thing, 2020 sustainability targets through the Green Company, which, as we mentioned before, is kind of like a subgroup within Adidas, which is something that Nike did not have. So in this case, Adidas does really well. Also, the report is found on the website, just as you can find Nike's. And one thing that we did kind of notice was that Nike kind of takes, going back, kind of summarizes it all for you, big picture stuff. So overall company, this is the summary for 2018, their progress towards the 2020 targets, whereas Adidas kind of takes it a step further and goes further into detail on their company progress per employee. So for example, you have 35% water savings per employee and 50% waste diversion rate in owned operations. So one thing also was, just like I said, breaking it down by employee. Continuing on with the conversation about Adidas, they did include an achieved target, which was to a target of waste reduction by 44%, which is actually 7% above their target. So they did a really good job of presenting this in a way, again, that is easy to follow. The summary, at least, is easy to follow and breaks it down in that way. Now, going back to Nike, when we focus on the sustainability efforts, the summary report, again, is going to include things like percentage of recycled material. They have the second life products and use of other materials to make new products. So it really just summarizes this for the average consumer. It's easy to follow. It really makes good use of the space that it has. And then when we look at Adidas sustainability efforts, also really great stuff. Both companies are doing really great. But the way that Adidas presents it is a little more specific, which again, we said, really great, takes it a step further, but can also, we found, be detrimental when it comes to trying to convey and let the target or the audience know of what they are actually doing. And they present it in a way that's a little hard to follow. So while they did take it a step further by getting further into detail, by calculating the waste reduction per employee, it also was something that was hard to follow. So on the right hand side, you'll find this is how the report was outlined and the message was sent, whereas Nike presents it in a way that's easy to follow, bigger picture, and Adidas breaks it down. So when you look at both, you'll see that Nike is overall company progress, as mentioned before, and then it breaks it down further in the report. Visually pleasing colors, graphics, and symmetry are also a big win here. A pro for Adidas would be insight into company progress, again, broken down by employee, really took it a step further. And they took advantage of their space. However, one thing that we think might have been detrimental to Adidas was that the message may have been lost due to poor graphics because it is a little harder to follow. And it took a more analytical approach. And a con for Nike would be some might find it too broad and not concrete enough in the beginning. So it really depends on what you're looking for. And what our team found was that overall less is more. So this is probably something that we would recommend to our client is to learn from both these companies, the pros of what both of them are doing correctly and maybe where they can improve.
Both companies have good CSR foundations and information. The difference that sets Nike apart from Adidas and other companies is how that information is presented. Skimming through the Adidas Green Company report, the information can seem crowded with numbers. In Adidas's case, white and empty spaces might make it easier on the eyes. However, they should also lessen the use of numbers and percentages. Using analytical data can give hard evidence, but there are also other ways to present that information within text rather than within graphs and tables where there is more room for creativity. For example, there are many icons used in Nike's impact report, such as shirts, wind turbines, sneakers, etc. Though Adidas's report does use some icons, the visual representation of the items is definitely lacking. Attaching stories to the numbers and presenting that information through the graphics on the report can make for a more visually appealing report, as well as making it easier to read and take in the data. People want to know the impact of the company on sustainability and the environment. Adidas is already working towards using mostly recycled plastics and cleaning up our environment, so a good place for Adidas to start is with a program that would allow for the opportunity to tell stories both analytically, like they have been doing in the past, and creatively through visuals and impact. This program is an ocean cleanup.
Our program proposal for Under Armour is to sponsor the Ocean Cleanup organization. So, based on our competitor analysis of Nike v Adidas, we recommend Under Armour to incorporate more recycled materials into their products to better demonstrate corporate social responsibility. Nike already, every product they produce already contains 75% recycled materials, and Adidas has already publicly committed to solely using only recycled plastics in their products by 2024. Whereas Under Armour has not prioritized incorporating recycled materials into their products. So a CSR sponsorship with the Ocean Cleanup organization would be a great way to, down the line, start producing a product line that's featured of solely recycled plastics. So according to the Ocean Conservancy organization, they estimate that there are over 150 million metric tons of plastic floating in our marine environments worldwide in territorial and international waters. So this would be a great way to also find a sustainable supply of, recycled plastics from the Ocean Cleanup Organization and through the sponsorship. So what would the sponsorship for Under Armour mean? Well, like we already talked about in the last slide, it would create potentially create a sustainable supply of protection materials that Under Armour could begin incorporating into their products. This would have a chance to maybe potentially cut production costs and material acquisition prices. So that would be great for stakeholders, and they would love that. Obviously, the organization Under Armour would love that to cut prices on making their products. This would also demonstrate the company's commitment to the environment. This would obviously improve brand image and make the public more aware of what Under Armour is doing, producing, and all that type of stuff that's going on with the organization. And why this sponsorship, I believe, is perfect for Under Armour is because the Ocean Cleanup organization is in its initial phases, and this would allow Under Armour to grow with the organization and slowly incorporate more recycled materials into their products. So like Adidas, they could follow in their footsteps and say, hey, by 2025, we want our products to now be 50% 50% recycled materials. So this sponsorship would allow Under Armour to grow with the Ocean Cleanup Organization as they start making a truly big difference on this planet.